Welcome to SE Podcast Teach&Talk โดยศูนย์วิทยาศาสตร์เพื่อการศึกษาก้าวใหม่ก้าวแห่งคุณภาพเพื่อปวงชน
with me, Nanapat Topan, educator practitioner from Science Center for Education and Bangkok Planetarium. I hope you miss me. We're back again at the Science at Home with Science Center for Education and Bangkok Planetarium. So you might remember from last week's episode, we were talking about the new era of deeper space exploration as a whole human. And we were talking about the stepping stone that will launch deep exploration this year. So we were talking about the Artemis 1 mission back to the moon, which accidentally this month we also celebrating the National Week of Science in Thailand, and we are airing the new documentary Fudo movie Back to the Moon for Good. So we're celebrating a lot of things, and that including the moon. So we were talking about how NASA just have announced a late August launch date for their new Mega Moon rocket. So we were talking about the Artemis 1 mission, which will be launched by the rocket that we nicknamed them the Mega Moon. They said the launch should be around the 29th of August if everything goes well, which will be very exciting because this is, again, the stepping stone of the 5 strategic goals that NASA have announced in the late 2017 after the President Donald Trump just basically directed them that we need to expand the space the space frontier. Now, we were talking about the goal of the Artemis 1 mission and how it's going to establish this gateway or the lunar gateway that will help with a further exploration to another planet in our solar system. I would like to go back into more details about that, but not just the mission. But today, in our episode, I would like to talk about why the SLS is a super duper, the most powerful rocket that's ever built. So let's go back. The vehicle is officially known as the Space Launch System, or the SLS, aka the Mega Moon rocket. And it is a part of the NASA's Artemis program, as we were talking about, which aims to put humans back on the moon for the first time in the 50 years, which we just celebrated after we landed on the moon the first time on the Apollo 11 mission. So they have tentatively paged the August 29th at the launch date this year for the most powerful rocket ever created to take a trip to the far side of the moon and back. This first mission will be uncrewed, aka no human, but later expeditions will put, hopefully, as stated by NASA officials, the first woman and the first person of color on our lunar companion. And today, as we're gonna go through that, there are a few reasons why we should talk about the SLS and why it's so cool. SLS is quite a whopper of a spacecraft. As stated before, it is the most powerful rocket that ever created by human so far. So the Apollo program of the 1960s and the 1970s was a towering highlight of the space age. It's the breaking down of space exploration back in the day. It delivered astronauts and experiments and some equipment to our natural satellite or our orbiters, the moon. The Saturn V rocket, or the Saturn V, that carry people to the moon during these Apollo missions is probably the measuring against which all the other launch vehicles should be compared. So it's basically, we have the benchmark, right? After the Apollo mission that landed on the moon, we have this rocket that called the Saturn V. It's the mighty rocket that carried a successful mission to space with human. So this is basically the example of what we should aim to better. For the first mission in the Artemis program, the SLS will be in what we know as its Block 1 configuration. So we have this plan for this rocket, right? And it doesn't only have one configuration. So it basically doesn't have one body. So what it is that we are now on the first version of this rocket. And there will be a later and future version, a better one, for further out space exploration. So under this configuration of the Block 1, the Megamoon rocket will be capped by the Orion crew vehicle and will stand 322 feet tall or 98 meters for us in this part of the world that we do not use the imperial system. 98 meters, so that is almost 100 meters tall. And that is actually higher than the Statue of Liberty and weigh 5.75 million pounds or 2.6 million kilograms. So that is very, very heavy. This means that it will actually be slightly shorter than the Saturn V, the rocket that carried the Apollo 11 mission, which was 363 feet or 110.5 meters tall. But the SLS will be capable of delivering 8.8 million pounds or 4 million kilograms of thrust, which is actually 15% more than the Saturn V, 7.5 million pounds or 3.4 million kilograms of thrust. And this SLS will even surpassing the Space Shuttle system, 7.8 million pounds or 3.5 kilograms of thrust, according to the Houston Space Center. So the SLS will be able to haul more than 30 tons or 27,000 kilograms to the moon. That's a lot. Imagine that, how heavy of a cargo we're carrying up. Well, this is slightly less than the Saturn V. So it's actually carry less weight than the Saturn V. But the Megamoon rocket's capacity will be wasted on the different rocket stages and fuel, which will make it an overall better cargo mover. Meaning, okay, so the Saturn V that carried the rocket that completed the mission on Moon before, the Apollo 11, can carry more weight, but the SLS will be more capable of carrying other stuff. So it can carry rocket stages and fuel. So it's basically a better car or a better vehicle to haul different stuff. So slightly less weight, but better and more suitable and carry different things. Future version of the SLS, or like I said, another version that will allow us to explore a deeper space or other planets or exoplanets, will be even mightier. So it just be, like a Pokemon. The second evolution of the first Pokemon is a little, cooler, better, stronger, faster. So the Block 2 configuration, which will have an additional upper stage to deliver more thrust and a larger area for payloads. So this basically going to have a bigger room for payloads and fuel and just make it faster and better. Will stand 365 feet tall or 111 meters and will be able to bring more than 50 tons or 46,000 kilos to the lunar surface. The rocket will be capable of delivering crews and material to Mars and should enable exploration of almost everywhere in the solar system. So remember, in our Artemis 1 mission, the SLS is working under the Block 1 configuration of the first version, or basically the first evolution of this rocket monster, to be able to carry the payloads and some other stuff to the moon. But the later on, which is the Block 2 configuration, will be able to have a larger payloads and deliver a bigger thrust and be able to carry crews, basically astronauts and other materials to Mars. So moon is far, very far from Earth. And now we are on the stepping stone of being able to go further than the moon, which is we're aiming at Mars right now. So we hope that the Block 2 configuration will be able to bring us to Mars. And the Block 2 configuration should enable exploration to almost anywhere in solar system. So basically, hopefully, the Block 2 configuration of this rocket, this mega moon rocket, will be able to bring us anywhere. Hopefully, Uranus later on in our deeper space exploration, which is super cool. I'm very excited right now, and you guys should be too, because this is happening in our lifetime. We're building a bigger, better, faster, more powerful things to be able to expand human frontier in space. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the engines. So I know a lot of you guys are not a rocket scientist. Well, I'm not one either. And we all know that, it's quite something to learn, and it's probably not an easy thing to talk about on a podcast that will, air less than 20 minutes or less than 30 minutes for that matter. But let's try and dive in and talk more about the powerful engines that fuel the thrust of this mega moon rocket that will launch, hopefully, finger crossed, on August 29th, 2022 this year. So the workhorse of the Artemis program is the RS-25 rocket engines, 4 of which will sit at the bottom of the Mega Moon rocket's core stage. So the RS-25 was originally used to launch the space shuttle, and NASA currently has 16 of them on hand to use for different SLS missions. So now they have this very powerful engine that called RS-25, and NASA currently has 16 of them. These veteran pieces of space hardware has been overhauled with new computer controllers and upgrades to ensure that they can handle the higher performance demand of a mega moon rocket launch. So basically, NASA has these rocket engines that call RS-25 laying around, 16 of them that have been used out of space mission. And they reuse it, of course. They were made with a very strong hold withstand material that had been tested that, of course, lasted in space. And now they're revamping it, basically. They pimp my ride on these engines and make them more powerful and make sure that they can handle a higher performance demands. Basically, make sure that it's powerful enough to do this. RS-25 rockets are powered by 730,000 gallons or 3.3 million liters of supercooled liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. The RS-25s will be supplemented by 2 solid rocket boosters attached to the side of the core. Each of these stands 177 feet tall, or 54 meters, which basically about the height of a 17-story building. So imagine a building that's it has 17 floors. It's a very tall building. And these are capable of delivering 3.6 million pounds or 1.6 million kilograms of thrust, according to NASA. The boosters will burn approximately 6 US tons or 4.5 metric tons of what we call, brace yourself because this word is actually kind of long, polybutadiene acrylonitrile propellant every second. So polybutadiene acrylonitrile, for those of you who are not familiar with these long words, but remember somehow the organic chemistry or any chemistry compounds back in high school probably can guess that this is some kind of polymer. And they are the largest and most powerful solid booster ever built. This is also probably why the Mega Moon rocket, or the SLS, is the most powerful, super duper, amazingly cool rocket that ever been built. So under its Block 1 configuration, remember that the SLS has like a couple of versions, and this is the first version that called Block 1. The SLS engines will provide an equivalent horsepower to 160,000 Corvette engines, according to NASA. So many of you might not be a rocket scientist, and also probably might not be, a car junkie head who knows what a Corvette is. But a Corvette is basically a car brand, American muscle. So it's American car brands, and we're talking about the car engine, which is quite big. I'm not so sure how many liters big, but a Corvette engine is a muscle car engine. So it's quite big engine in itself. And this SLS engine will provide an equivalent horsepower to 160,000 of them. That's a lot. So a lot of you who love cars might be super excited right now. I am too. With 20% more than the Saturn V and the equivalent horsepower. So with Block 2, so we were talking about the Block 1 configuration, and then we're talking about the Block 2 configuration will be up to an astounding 9.2 million pounds, or 4.2 million kilograms of thrust, which is, again, so 20% more than the Saturn V and the equivalent horsepower of 208,000 Corvette engines. So the Block 1 will provide the equivalent horsepower to 160,000 Corvette engines. And in the Block 2, which will hopefully bring us to Mars, will be up to the equivalent of 208,000 Corvette engines. So that's like double, almost. The agency has also said that the agency is the NASA, basically saying that a single RS-25 engine could generate enough power for, wait for it, 846,591 miles. Or, in layman's term, 1,362,456 kilometers. That's basically 1.3 kilometers of residential streetlights. Residential streetlights mean just street that we live in, which is a length of street that would reach the moon and back, and then circle the earth 15 times. One of NASA's stated goal with its Artemis program is to land, quote unquote, the first woman and the first person of color on the moon. So of course NASA now expanding the opportunity, not just for men to be able to walk on the moon, on the surface of the Luna 50 years ago, but now, in my lifetime and your lifetime, we're talking about equality and minority, that we'll be able to give the same opportunity to women and people of minority to be able to also participate in this fascinating, astounding event of our lifetime, to be able to land back on the moon again. The SLS Orion Crew capsule, so basically this thing that will get the astronaut to stay in when we launch the rocket is capable of taking 4 astronauts to jaunt to space. So at that point, we'll be choosing 4 people to be able to go back to the moon on this mission. And it is expected to do so for the first time with the Artemis 2 mission. So now we are in the stage of Artemis 1, stepping stone. And we will launch the Artemis 1 on August 29th this year, hopefully, to be able to, assemble the gateway, which is the lunar orbit space. Like, it's almost like a place where we're going to land a new space station almost, but further than an international space station that we have right now, and we call that the lunar gateway. So that will be a station where we will allow the facilities, allows astronaut, the crews, and the equipment to be able to work there and experiment deeper space experiments. And also, hopefully, be the middle ground from the Earth and another further deep space exploration in the future. So the Artemis 2 mission, which will fly around the moon sometimes after the uncrewed Artemis 1 mission, is currently scheduled for late August. The Artemis 3 is expected to bring people to the moon no earlier than 2025. But basically, if you remember on the last episode, in the strategic goals mission of this is to bring people back to the moon in the late 2020s. So no longer than 2029, we should be able to land on the moon if everything goes as smoothly as planned. Finger crossed. So the program hopes to eventually build an orbiting station around the moon called the Lunar Gateway, aka the gateway that we were talking about in the last episode, and establish the Artemis base camp near the moon's south pole. So the Artemis base camp is basically where we'll be able to land and send out the equipment and allow us human to explore the lunar surface and its resources. Having humans rather than just robots, according to NASA, on the moon's surface will allow for faster and more complicated procedures to explore on the moon. NASA lists its top science goals for Artemis as being focused on understanding planetary processes on airless worlds. So the moon has basically have very, very thin atmosphere, unlike the Earth. Characterize lunar ice and weather that can be used as resources for human missions. Learning more about the history of the Earth-Moon system, which we rarely know. Searching for records of ancient solar and stellar processes that may have left an impact on the moon. So basically, learning more about any celestial activities that ever impact the moon. And then using the moon as a base to view the universe and conduct unprecedented astronomical observations. The Mega Moon rocket will also set the stage for a further exploration of Mars, as we talked about in the last episode. This Artemis 1 and going back to the moon is just another stepping stone of the new human era of deeper space exploration. And maybe to finally answer the question that we always wonder, can we actually habitate somewhere outside the Earth, colonize the moon, move to the Mars, maybe harvesting some diamonds on Saturn? Who knows? This is something that's huge and bigger than just, NASA itself or one country. This is a new leap of mankind, which the first one was 50 years ago with the successful launching mission of Apollo 11. That the tiny little step of a man, it just one big great step of a mankind. And now, 50 years later, we are about to go back to the moon and do it again with the new project of the Artemis 1 and hopefully this will be the second big leap that allow humanity to explore the space frontier. So after the moon, we're eyeing on the Mars. And hopefully this mega moon rocket will also set stage for Mars, both in making it easier to undertake something like a robotic sample return mission, because now it's actually hard for us to retrieving like any sample from Mars. And by teaching NASA how to mitigate the risk involved in sending humans in deeper space into the solar system, as we were talking about that the lunar gateway will also be the place where a scientist will conduct experimental environment on a deeper space impact on living organisms, so we know if we send humans out there in a deeper space than we ever been before, which is further than the moon, how the radio and the microgravity will actually affect the human body and the living organisms. And because it's extremely powerful and it can carry a large amount of cargo, it also enables scientists to dream of even more ambitious projects. So this is a little hint here that there are also some news telling by the little bird that scientists were thinking about, something like collecting samples from the geysers of the Saturn's moon, like the enchiladas. That is not confirmed. We're just talking about trying to, how would I say this? Trying to aim further into our solar system, keep expanding the horizon and keep expanding humans' expansion into the space, and to be able to explore and answer many unknown questions that we have about space. And this is the first step after 50 years that we've been to the moon into making like a base camp on the moon. Imagine that. It's like submitting, the highest mountain. You have to go to the base camp that allows you to be able to prepare, to be able to experiment a little bit more before you summit the peak. And the peak might be somewhere like the Mars, or who knows, exoplanet somewhere out there in our solar system. And these are the reason why the SLS is a super duper spacecraft that we all should be excited about. And if any of you curious a little bit more about how it works, you can go back to the space.com or nasa.org to learn more about the whole project of Artemis 1 or the whole SLS fact sheets. Today, don't forget to follow us for updates and for more information on www.scienceplanet.org. Follow our Facebook page or YouTube at ศูนย์วิทยาศาสตร์เพื่อการศึกษาท้องฟ้าจำลองกรุงเทพ Spotify and Google Podcasts, Teach and Talk. Don't forget to tune in. Thank you.
Teach and Talk โดยศูนย์วิทยาศาสตร์เพื่อการศึกษาก้าวใหม่ก้าวแห่งคุณภาพเพื่อปวงชน SCE The Modern Co-Learning Center for Science and Ed-tech for All